Hi, this is the video for Daf Samekh Gimmel of Masechet Avodah Zarah for Daf Shevui. I am Joshua Kulp, same as always. And I wanted to go over the story that sets off a discussion that lasts quite a long time because I don't know if I dedicate enough time and space inside my commentary to talk about this story and really what is going on in the story. So the story is actually found at the bottom of page 62. The story is about the people of the house of Rabbi Yanai who would borrow fruit of Shveit produce from poor people and pay them back on in the 8th year, and Rabbi Yochanan sanctions that. And so the discussion is about what does it mean to pay back someone for something that is prohibited. The question is, what's possibly wrong with this? What is the prohibition over here that the people of the house of Rabbi Yanai are doing, or the poor people are doing with this produce in the 8th year? So first of all, a little bit more background on the story. Why go through this hullabaloo in the first place? And that's because during Shvi'it, there's a pasuk, Exodus 23, verse 11, that explicitly says that you're supposed to leave the sabbatical year produce for the poor. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't eat any of it. It just means you have to leave your fields open and let the poor come and collect on the sabbatical year. So if the poor are coming and collecting, they're going to collect as much as they possibly can. This is their opportunity. Part of the problem is, first of all, other people besides poor need produce during that year. And the other problem is the poor are not necessarily so well off because they have all this produce this year, but what are they going to do next year? They want to bank some of it, but there's a problem with banking it. And we'll see what the problem is in a second. So, and they can't sell it. You can't engage in trading with it. So what did they do? They gave it to the people of the house of Yanai, or they loaned it to them. And then the people of the house of Yanai would pay them back with other produce after that year, on the 8th year. So that benefited both the people of the house of Yanai and the poor people. But the Rishonim, including Rashi, all asked, so what's the big problem? There doesn't seem to be anything wrong with this. So Rashi says this is after the time of, what's called Bior, which is the destruction, like Bior Chametz, the removal of Shvi'it produce. Once the Shvi'it produce no longer grows in the fields where it's available for your animals, at that point, the Shvi'it produce can no longer be kept in your house. So if this Shvi'it produce went after the time of Bior, and then other produce was exchanged for it, this Shvi'it, the things that are exchanged for it become prohibited like the original Shvi'it produce themselves. So that's what Rashi says. The Tosfot go into a discussion about whether or not people can eat food after the time of Bior. I don't want to get into that. But what they say is, look, since it's the 8th year, these poor people won't realize that they're supposed to treat this produce with what's called Kedushat Shvi'it. There are certain restrictions, the holiness of sabbatical year produce. They won't know that they're supposed to do this because, after all, it's the 8th year. This produce isn't the stuff that was actually gathered in the 7th year, that they would know that you're supposed to treat with sanctity. But this produce is stuff that was exchanged for that produce. And therefore, they're going to think it's just regular produce that they can do anything they want with, and they won't observe the certain restrictions that apply to the sabbatical year produce. So that's not really what the sugya is about. The sugya is about why it's okay to pay them back, even though the fruit that they have, this fruit is now, it's prohibited. So why is it okay to engage in that kind of transaction? That's what the sugya is about. So the sugya isn't really so much about the original deal as it is about this paying back process. Okay, good luck enjoying this, learning the sugya. There is a lot about the pay of a prostitute. Not a practical issue, but it is something that the rabbis use to try to understand the nature of economic transactions.